Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Rocket Monday. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at America is going back to space in 2019. So let's dive right into it. Now first you have to understand what the heck happened to a country that just went to the moon. So first thing happened is space shuttle disaster. Now when space shuttle was built, almost in early days they had ejection seats. Basically if something goes wrong you can safely save the astronauts. But that was removed and the decision for that was A, it was impractical given how the craft was designed, and B, it is very safe. But two of them blew up, and that happened in less than 200 flights. So less than 200 missions and you have already two, and given the fact there were 7 astronauts in each, it's not like 2 or 3 astronauts, same with the Russian spacecraft. So even if it has only had these 2 accidents, it lost way too many astronauts. It was way too expensive, way too dangerous, and all those things combined created a scenario where like even US government could not afford it, because per launch cost was coming around somewhere 1 to 1.5 billion per month. It's supposed to be cheaper. Basically it was more or less same as Saturn V, and Saturn V have better track record. So it was done. So then they had a lot of parts laying around. So first project that was created to replace this was Constellation project. That failed, and then they went to SLS. You can check my full detailed video about SLS here. Now SLS is inherently a lousy design, because what SLS is basically take the parts from space shuttle, basically the fuel tank, take the boosters and just combine it. Even the engines are literally the same engines. So problem is this is not designed with modern technology in mind. So they are like, okay, we will just do it. And this, if you think it looks more or less like conventional rocket or more like Saturn V, the reason was once they put the orbiter in the in the path of falling debris, that caused damage to heat shield, which caused the second disaster. So they are like, okay, we'll put it on top, and it does come with a benefit that in case of emergency you can abort it. Shuttle had no system of abortion. Basically if something goes wrong, you dead. Here if something goes wrong, you can be safely aborted. So SLS was created. Now here's the, it should be ready 10 years ago. It's way behind schedule, and many times people call it Senate launch system. Basically inherently there is nothing good about this. Inherently it's just okay, we had parts, we combined it. Now you would think that would mean it should be like ready very quickly, because given the context, like it requires 4 engines. Space shuttle required 3 engines. Here's the deal, there are 8 to 9 engines already done, like built, ready. If there was space shuttle, they would have just bolted it on, like completely done, completely tested, everything is ready, good to go, but still taking too long. The fuel tank, we already have the manufacturer, we already have the pipeline and everything figured out, still taking too long. The boosters, instead of 4 segments, it's 5 segments. Again, we already have the system. Adding more segments should not take like freaking 10 years. So this whole system is taking way too long. So even government is like, yeah, we can't afford this. So what just happened here is basically NASA and politics got together and stupidity came out. So that's why NASA as of now has no way to send their own astronaut into an International Space Station. So then NASA comes along. This is exactly at the time of 2007, 2008, and they're like, yeah, we can't afford this. Basically government cannot afford government itself. So they're like, we're gonna create what we call commercial resupply services. Basically ISS is there, and creating a human rated vehicle is not something that you can do just in few days. It takes years to decades. So they're like, okay, we're gonna send our astronauts using Russian Soyuz systems, but we're gonna do the resupply mission using our commercial partners, whoever they may be. So that system was created in 2008. It's like government is like, okay, we can't handle ourselves, we're gonna give contracts, whoever builds it the cheapest. On top of that, the whole idea with that was like, this will be a test bed, because once you get money starts rolling, people will start making it cheaper, more efficient, more safe. Then they're gonna upgrade to commercial crew. Now on top of that, then commercial crew was signed, and it was signed in 2010. So this was the insignia that was created. So idea is you're gonna have commercial resupply system. Once because 20-30 company applied and only 2 to 3 successfully survived. So that was that part. Once they know like, okay, these companies can do it, they're like SpaceX and Boeing, they're like, okay, let's move forward to the next step. Now the whole idea is that you're gonna have open market. Basically anybody can compete as long as they meet the deadline. So this is crucial aspect. Many times you will wonder like why this company failed or that company failed, is that NASA this time is playing like a private company. It's like, okay, this is your deadline, It's not, I don't care whether you meet that or not, but like these are your milestone, you must meet it. Like let's say they give you a milestone, hey, please have a full scale mock-up by let's say 2015. You must have that, you cannot delay that. So they will not ask you about the final milestone. They are like, okay, this is the milestone, you're supposed to be ready, and let's say 15-16 days plus and minus they can handle. But if you're like, okay, mock-up should be ready by then and it's not there, they're like, okay, you're out of the race. They will not give you money. So for this way, they weed out weaker competitions and only few survived. So this was the commercial resupply service, basically the background on which the current space industry is running. Then we come to SpaceX, because SpaceX is one of the survivors that successfully survived. Now, SpaceX is doing something very unique here. They are reusing the spacecraft, same as space shuttle, same as basically almost spacecrafts are always reused because you have people in them. So, but it also recycling the launcher. So, if you have Dragon 2 and Falcon 9, everything is in here is recycled except the interstage. Basically, this puppy is thrown out. So what you have here is a reusable launcher, reusable spacecraft with minor consumables. On top of that, they successfully did a docking system in 3 March 2008, just a few days ago basically, and the docking was uncrewed. However, you have to understand, this is the first time something docked with International Space Station on its own power. International Space Station, like with the Dragon 1, had a Canada arm going there, grabbing it and then docking it. Now that was done to, you have to understand, when you have something like this, if it basically jams into International Space Station fast enough, it can deorbit it. Now of course that's an extreme case scenario and there are fails if that happens, but nobody wanted to take that risk. So earlier days they were solely relying on berthing process, because if in berthing process they realize, okay, you are coming in too fast, your delta V should be 0, the speed gap between ISS versus basically whatever is docking to it should be close to 0. But if it's like, let's say 10 or 15, they're like, yeah, we're just not gonna, we're gonna let you go. So that reason, for that reason, this is very crucial to safely dock with International Space Station without causing any damage to a space station. And the whole system, the whole SpaceX system is Dragon 2 plus Falcon 9. Now, NASA will pay SpaceX upwards of $2.6 billion. Now, this payment is not one go, like, okay, there's $2.6 billion, take it and go. No, these are step by step. Like, okay, you have done this docking mission, now here's next step of money. Now you have crewed mission, next step of money. So they are doing step by step. So this won't, this will save NASA from basically James Webb Space Telescope kind of scenario, where they have spent so much money, now they have to do it. So this keeps SpaceX honest because they have to deliver, and this also saves NASA from a scenario where they have already spent too much. So if you start delaying, let's say delay of 15-20 days, okay, no problem, but you are delayed by milestones, like you're this supposed to be done by this month but it's not done, and you are saying it will take another year, yeah, you're out. So SpaceX is the first contractor to successfully pull it off in 3 months 2000, and if things go all well, before 2019 is over, SpaceX will become the first basically company to put astronauts on ISS using American technology. SpaceX will become the first. Now this is one contender. Contender number 2 is Boeing. Now Boeing is using reusable spacecraft, however not reusable launcher. Now Boeing is also supposed to put a man on ISS upwards of in August 2019. Now it could be delayed, but if all things go even remotely to the plan, we will have a second launch vehicle. Like SpaceX will be the one that does this first, but basically ULA system and Boeing system will follow suit. Now the idea with Starliner is kind of unique. Now Boeing is developing the Starliner, okay, this is our craft that will go and dock with things, but it can be put on top of almost anything. They can put on top of Atlas 5, you can put it on top of Atlas Delta 4, you can put it on top of Falcon 9 itself, and you can put it on top of a rocket that hasn't been launched yet, that is Vulcan. So that is the idea. It's basically launcher independent. NASA can simply buy 5-10 of these, and let's say they launch something and something went wrong with Atlas 5, they will switch to Delta 4. Now Delta 4 is, let's say, pre-booked and not ready, they can go to Falcon 9. If Falcon 9 is pre-booked and not ready, they can go to Vulcan. So the idea is they have a lot more flexibility with this design. Now NASA is supposed to pay upwards of $4.2 billion to Boeing for this sort of project. Now if you think that is much more than what SpaceX is getting, that's absolutely true. However, NASA have to have 2 competitors. They cannot have a monopoly. They have to have 2 competitors. That is why even Boeing is in the race. So what does it mean for the future? Now, first thing you have to understand, as of now, if all things go accordingly, in 2020, we will have 3 ways to go to ISS. Now, first one will be obviously the Soviet tested, time tested, and then you will have 2 American systems. Now, that will allow us lower cost and redundancy. Now, this is a crucial aspect. When you, if you are familiar with the space news, just last year, not even last whole year, we had an issue launch abort system with a Russian system. Now, here's the problem. Because there was only one launch system in that can take astronauts, the whole system was grounded. So you could have a scenario where something faulty goes wrong and your ISS becomes unattended, because either the people on ISS will get trapped there, or they will be like, they have to use a lifeboat system. So what this lifeboat is, basically the spacecraft will be docked there and you will land with a different spacecraft, and once the next launch will happen, that will be docked and you will dock with this, because these can be kept in space for upwards of, let's just say maximum means 1 year. You must recycle them. So you will have one go there, okay, the crew will use the second one, then the crew will remove this one. They were basically cycling it, so you will always have a fresh coat, fresh lifeboat system. This is what was the problem with space shuttle. Space shuttle could not be docked with international space station and forgotten. Like, you have to come it back. Like, it could have only successfully survived for 11 to 12 days. These puppy, they must survive 200 days. That was the first line in the contract. You must be able to dock with international space station and stay there for upwards of 200 days. That's the bare minimum. So all of these can do. So this allows lower cost, because now you have multiple of them, and this creates a competition between Boeing and basically SpaceX. They both will try to reduce the cost, because if, let's say, cost of Boeing is too high per launch, not the development cost but per launch, NASA will simply say, okay, we'll launch 1 from you but 9 from SpaceX. The reason why they want to do that 1 from that is, so again, protection against monopoly, and second, it will give them incentive instead of just cancelling the project. So this is the whole idea. Now, be mindful, ISS is about to retire. Like, they barely have 10 to 15 years left, barely. And I'm talking like most of the time of astronauts right now, as I speak to you, is just repairing the ISS. It's basically starting to fall apart. Like, it's an old system, you have to understand. It's a very old system. So during this time, once these missions start to become successful, it will open a next door. Now, that next door is basically Bigelow Aerospace that will try to build their own space station. Now, Bigelow knows what they are doing. It's not a small company made in someone's backyard. They know what they're doing, and they have already docked a module to International Space Station for further testing, and it has come, the results were quite good. So they will make second space station, because you have to understand, NASA is ditching ISS and they are not creating a replacement for ISS. They are creating what we call deep space gateway. You can check my video here. That's a bad idea. You can check my last episode on this. That's just a bad idea. That's just mathematically bad idea. So during that time, there will be a scenario where you don't have any space station, like low Earth orbit space station. However, if Bigelow pulls it ahead and then these things are there, you can easily make into another space tourism, space hotel, or like many small countries, like let's say India, Pakistan, or things of that nature. Basically small countries, Australia, these can come together and make second generation international space station, because now you will have multiple launchers. You can go to Russia, you can go to SpaceX, you can go to Boeing. So this will unlock a completely new generation of space stations if done correctly. So this was my presentation on basically USA going back to space. I hope you liked it or learned from it. In that case, please leave a like, click the ad shown in this video. That will directly help me. If you didn't like it, don't worry about it. You can press dislike button twice to show me your extra disappointment, and please leave a comment, because I reply to all of them, and subscribe. Press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.